My dad sat across from me in the quiet of our kitchen. No TV, no radio. Not even the refrigerator dared make noise. He looked at me like a man about to confess to a priest, hands folded, eyes tired, jaw set in a way that told me the truth was bigger than the room. He didn't ease into it. He didn't warm up. He just said, "You ready for something heavy?" I wasn't, but he didn't wait for my answer. He took a deep breath, the kind people take before surgery or sentencing, and told me the story I'm about to tell you. It didn't just change how I saw my family. It erased the family I thought I had. My grandmother was the oldest of 10. 10 kids raised by a woman who treated parenting like an optional chore. Their mother, my great-grandmother, gambled like she was training for a sport. She'd leave the house for days, sometimes weeks, chasing luck across Detroit. She usually returned broke and pregnant. My grandmother learned to raise children before she ever learned to be one. She grew up in a house full of siblings with empty stomachs and empty answers. By the time she met my grandfather in the late 60s, she already carried enough chaos for 2 lifetimes. He added more. He loved drugs. He loved stealing cars. He loved disappearing in the middle of the night when cops got too close. One day, he vanished altogether. Didn't leave a note. Just left the state. My grandmother stood in the doorway, 2 kids in her arms, and realized nobody was coming back for them. This should have been the darkest chapter. It wasn't even close. Years passed. My grandmother remarried, this time to a man named Harold. Simple guy, steady job, quiet presence, a face that looked like it had never yelled. For a while, things calmed down. My dad and his sister, my Aunt Victoria, finally had something close to normal. But normal in my family is like good weather in a disaster movie. It's just there to make the next scene hurt more. Victoria grew up, became a teenager, and Harold didn't stay in his role. My grandmother found out not through words, through changes, through silence, through the way Victoria avoided eye contact. The truth broke her. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She took her daughter, grabbed what she could carry, and tore Harold out of the house like a bad page from a book. Victoria was exiled for a decade, never mentioned, never photographed, never spoken about. I didn't even know she existed until I was 10, and when she returned, she didn't come alone. Victoria came back after 10 silent years. No warning, no explanation. Just walked through the doorway with 3 boys trailing behind her like shadows. Family gatherings are strange when the missing piece suddenly shows up again. We all did the polite things, the hugs, the small smiles, the quick questions that don't ask anything real. My grandmother forgave her immediately. Of course she did. Mothers do that, even when they shouldn't, even when the cost is their own peace. We put her photo back on the wall. We pretended the rupture had never happened. We called it rebuilding. But forgiveness doesn't fix DNA, and biology doesn't care about good intentions. That truth sat quietly in the room, long before any of us knew its name. I slid a photograph across the table toward my dad. I don't know why. Maybe I needed something solid between us before the truth landed. Dad looked at the picture the way a surgeon looks at an X-ray, quiet, resigned, already knowing what he's about to cut open. He said, quote, "Little Carl isn't Big Carl's son." No hesitation, no breath between the words, just the clean, cold delivery of someone who's carried a secret too long. Then he added, "He's Harold's." That sentence felt like a draft coming in through a cracked window, cold enough to bite. I stared at the photo, Little Carl, maybe 7, holding Big Carl's hand like it was the safest place in the world. But the truth was sitting right there in my dad's voice. The man who raised him wasn't the man who made him. After he told me, he left the room, didn't say goodnight, didn't look back. I sat alone with the photograph and did the thing you can't stop yourself from doing. I went and got the album. I flipped through the pages like a detective with no jurisdiction. Birthdays, school pictures, fishing trips, every image arranged like a timeline of lies no one meant to create. The resemblance wasn't a theory. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't debatable. Little Carl looked like Harold's son, not just in one picture, in every single one. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The truth clings to you. I closed the album only to open it again a moment later, like someone rereading the last message from a disaster they're still trying to understand. I thought the worst was over. I really did. But secrets don't travel alone in my family. They arrive in pairs, like bad weather. Dad sat back down, not because he wanted to talk, but because the silence was too heavy to walk away from. He rubbed his hands together once, one long scrape of skin against skin. Then he said, "Alex isn't Big Carl's either." My body went still in that way animals do when they sense a storm. Dad didn't blink. He just kept going. He belongs to Big Carl's younger brother. The truth didn't just shift, it collapsed. I had no words, none. I thought little Carl's situation was the earthquake, but this was the aftershock that knocks down whatever is still standing. Alex, the youngest, the one who always smiled the easiest, had been raised by a man who didn't know he wasn't his father. And worse, the man who was his father was sitting at the same Thanksgiving table every year pretending not to be. I don't know how Dad carried that knowledge for so long, or how he expected me to carry it now. The air changed after that. There's no other way to describe it. It felt heavier, like the truth had grown a body and was sitting in the room with us. I kept thinking about Harold, a man I barely knew, a man my family avoids describing, a man whose name carries more weight than any crime or memory deserves. And yet his shadow was everywhere, in little Carl's smile, in the slope of his nose, in the expression he made when he didn't understand something. Harold was the ghost no one invited, but everyone inherited. It's strange how a person can die and still ruin birthdays, holidays, whole bloodlines. He had been gone since 2011, but that didn't matter. The damage he left behind is alive. Dad stood again. He didn't look at me this time, just stared at the window like he expected an answer out there. He said, very quietly, "Don't tell them." 4 words, but they felt like a sentence handed down. Not a suggestion, not advice, a duty, an inheritance. He didn't explain why. Maybe he didn't have to. Some truths are too sharp to hand to people who don't know they're bleeding. Little Carl, Rico, Alex, all good men, all living under roofs built from lies they never asked for. If I told them, I would tear their entire lives in half. But if I didn't, I would carry the guilt forever. There is no version of this that ends clean. Only versions that end differently. Damaged Dad walked out of the room, left the light on, left the truth sitting across from me, waiting to be named. I kept thinking about my cousins, little Carl, Rico, Alex, 3 good men born from bad circumstances. Little Carl works 2 jobs. He'd give you the shirt off his back and apologize that it wasn't ironed. Rico stays out of trouble the way some people stay out of the ocean. Carefully, deliberately, with experience. Alex? Alex laughs like he's never known a single dark thing. That's the cruelest part. He smiles with his whole face, because he believes his life has no cracks in it. I realize something sitting there in the quiet. The truth doesn't always set people free. Sometimes it traps them. If I told these men what I knew, I wouldn't be saving them. I'd be undoing them. Their father wouldn't be their father. Their memories wouldn't be their memories. Their history wouldn't be their own. Some truths don't liberate. They detonate. I opened the album again. Not to compare faces. I already knew the truth. This time I looked at the shape of their lives. Birthdays, graduations, a father's hand on a shoulder, a kid's arm around his dad's neck. Pictures taken with trust that never had the facts behind it. And I kept thinking, what would this do to them? What would happen to little Carl when he learns the man he calls Dad isn't connected to him in any biological way? What would happen to Alex when he learns he's the son of his father's younger brother? Would they stop loving the man who raised them? Would they question every hug, every memory, every moment? Some truths don't just hurt. They corrode. They turn the past into a lie. They turn the present into a question, and they leave the future without footing. I closed the album. This time it stayed closed. I sat at the table long after the house fell silent. The lamp buzzed. The clock ticked, but everything inside me felt still. Dad's footsteps faded down the hall. He didn't say goodnight. He didn't need to. He gave me something impossible and walked away from it. I stared at the empty chair across from me, the one Dad had filled for only a moment. It felt like the chair was still holding the truth. The weight of it pressed on my chest. Not just the facts, the implications, the responsibility. The silence required to keep lives from shattering. It was the first time I understood that secrets can be inherited just like bloodlines, and sometimes they are heavier. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. Some truths echo. Some truths stain. Some truths sit behind your eyes and replay themselves whether you want them to or not. Around 3 a.m., I replayed the whole thing in my head. Every sentence, every photograph, every silence between us. And I realized something simple, awful, and undeniable. If I told little Carl or Alex the truth, I wouldn't be helping them find their identities. I would be taking their identities away. There's a line you don't cross, even when the truth is on the other side of it, especially then. I kept wondering why Dad told me. Why now? Why after so many years of silence? It hit me sometime around sunrise, slow and heavy, like a truth with no place else to go. He didn't tell me to burden me. He told me because he couldn't die with it. He needed someone younger, someone quieter, someone who wouldn't weaponize it, someone who could sit with the truth and not let it destroy every relationship left standing. He didn't say any of that. He doesn't have the vocabulary for it. But the weight in his voice did. When he said, "Don't tell them," it wasn't a command, it was a plea. And it was the closest thing to trust he has ever handed me. By morning, nothing had changed, but everything had changed. The boys were still themselves. My aunt was still my aunt. Big Carl was still the man who raised them with a loyalty biology couldn't match. And I was still the only one who knew how fragile it all really was. I made a decision before the sun fully rose. I will carry this, and I will carry it quietly. Not because I'm scared, not because the truth is ugly, but because the truth is dangerous. Some people deserve peace more than they deserve answers. Some families survive because of the lies they never uncover, and some secrets do more good locked away in the dark. My grandmother spent her life surviving. Dad spent his life staying silent. And I guess this is my place in the chain. Not to expose the past, but to protect the future. Some families pass down heirlooms. Mine passes down plot twists. And now that you've heard it, you carry it too.